My name is Simone and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Class Cover, and I'm here tonight for this live Facebook Live event webinar with Meridith Ebbs, who will be presenting at our Sydney conference on this topic of digital technologies. So thank you for joining us tonight, Meridith.
That's okay. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get this topic underway because it's something that teachers will need to know, and it's not something that everyone's really comfortable with. So it's great to have Meridith here, who has a wealth of experience around digital technologies. So I think we'll start off with the first question. Are you ready?
Sure. Yep.
Great. So Meridith, why do we have to teach digital technologies?
So this is a national Facebook, so I'll talk in multiple states, but the Australian curriculum was launched in South Australia in 2014 with digital technologies and design and technologies. That's been rolled out across the entire country gradually, and New South Wales next year is the last state to implement its version of the Australian curriculum. So every single state actually has curriculum requirements or syllabus requirements around digital technologies.
Great. So it's becoming mandatory, in other words.
From next year, every single state. Some states are still not assessing and reporting. Some states are just implementing, but that by 2020, I think the last state will be assessing and reporting.
I see. And what does that mean for relief teachers?
It means relief teachers need to be prepared to go into classrooms where potentially they could be asked to teach that content. And that mandatory content is from K to 8.
Great, okay. All right, well, the next question. What is computational thinking and how is it linked to digital technologies?
Okay, so computational thinking is a thinking style that is embedded inside the Australian curriculum and each of the states that have not, they've adopted their own version. So Western Australia, Victoria and New South Wales all have a version of Australian curriculum, but inside all of those documents, computational thinking is the reason that we teach it. And computational thinking is the thinking process behind a big problem, taking a very big problem and breaking it down, eradicating unnecessary information and trying to break it down into a sequence of steps so that simply put, that a robot could follow. So it's a thinking style. It's a thinking style. It's linked to digital technologies because that is part of what we use to teach computational thinking. And the purpose of that is that is the way employment and the future of the world is going. So we need students who are familiar with not just using digital technologies, but also be able to create and make and design in digital technologies.
Okay, I see. And how can you teach digital technologies then and computational thinking if you don't have access to technology?
So there's lots of different resources, and what I'll do is I'll put together a document, send you a link that you can send to your members. And you use tools, so it's about the thinking process is predominantly the key to this. So you use methods that some teachers have been using for a long time. For example, in stage 1 or K to 2, teachers may get a whole bunch of pictures out of a storybook, give them to the students all jumbled up and say, could you please put these all in the correct order? So that's actually computational thinking. You're taking a large problem, you're taking all the pictures, and you may put pictures in there that aren't even in the story, that are extra information, and they have to then put them in a certain order. So that's a computational thinking process. Another in maths, finding the next pattern in a repeating pattern of numbers. Find the next colour in the series of coloured beads. Those sorts of techniques are things that have been teaching computational thinking. So if you teach it offline or unplugged, there's different resources you can use. So something may be a product called CS Unplugged. So CS Unplugged, if you were to Google that, you would find a website which has got a whole stack of resources to teach unplugged in a way that's unplugged. So teachers going into a classroom where they don't have access to teaching could have that in their toolkit as such. And, you know, you're on year 5 and pull out a lesson from that CS Unplugged product.
That's a great suggestion for a resource. What I'm getting from this, I suppose, is that a lot of teachers would already be teaching computational thinking in a in some kind of way. So
Yeah.
so then how are we bringing the focus in to be teaching computational thinking with digital technologies, like using digital technology resources and implementing that?
So if they have access to, say, computers, if a free website might be something like scratch.mit.edu, or on an iPad, it might be Scratch Junior, or an app like Codable, which what you would do is you would propose a problem, and then you would help the students sequence and plan and design their program that they need to do to solve the problem. An example might be create an app that, create a game that identifies odd and even numbers, or create a game that identifies multiples of 5. So so you propose that problem, and then you help them design. When I tap on or click on that number, if it is a correct answer, disappear. If it is not, display an error message. And so the students would need to actually
It's like self-correcting.
Plan that process, and then, so that's one lesson. And then the next lesson would be to design it inside the coding tool. And tools like Scratch are free.
Great. And that's really handy for relief teachers going into classrooms where they typically, it can be a challenge to access the right kind of resources. So free resources are always relief teachers' favourite resources. I think they're anyone's favourite resources.
They're all schools. So if they're going to use something like Scratch, they'd need to have a log on. So the students all need a log on. So a product such as CS First, or if they create a teacher's account in Scratch, they'd be able to create 30 logons. So when they go into the class, they can just distribute 30 logons and reuse those logons each class time they go to a different class.
Oh, well, that's really handy. That's really good. So what I'm also hearing is that computational thinking, and digital technologies, it's across all KLAs. It's not its own sort of KLA.
No.
I suppose in my mind even, and I'm sure other teachers would share this sentiment, would be that it's almost like its own key learning area, like an area of like science or design and technology or something like that. But it's actually something that can be implemented across all KLAs. Is that correct?
It can. So yes and no. So in Australian curriculum, it is definitely its own curriculum area. It's digital technologies and design and technologies. In New South Wales, that would be inside K-6, it would be science and technology. And there's outcomes now for New South Wales teachers that need to get familiar with the new syllabus document. But there's two different things. There's ICT capabilities and there's digital technologies. ICT capabilities is like literacy. Every single teacher from K-12 is responsible for literacy. They're responsible for teaching children how to understand information in their content area. And ICT capabilities is every single teacher's responsibility. It's in every single key learning area, and the responsibility is to learn to use technology. So it's about, can you send an email? Can you open a presentation? Can you take a photo on an iPad? Can you create a graph in Excel? All of those different techniques are every single teacher's responsibility, and there is multiple references to using technology across all KLAs. Digital technologies does have its own key learning area, and it is found inside digital technologies and design and technologies and science and technology in New South Wales. However, every single KLA can use those technologies to teach concepts. So you could create a calculator, so a math game in math using digital technology. You could use microbits, which are a small board that you can buy for $25. A lot of schools are now purchasing those because they're low cost. You could use a board to make a dice, or you could use it to make a watering system, or you could use it to create a game that might illustrate or represent different concepts in different key learning areas. So teachers shouldn't be afraid to try and take those digital technologies and integrate them from K-10, because it's engaging and it's a different way of approaching their subject areas.
I see. So yeah, I was about to say that myself, was that, yeah, teachers shouldn't be necessarily apprehensive of this introduction, because it's likely going to be concepts that they're already teaching. They might just need to find, different ways of teaching it within the digital technologies requirements. So
Yes.
no, that's great. I think we'll move on to the next question.
Sure.
So how can teachers get resources to use in the classroom in teaching digital technologies?
Okay. So my first go-to source for my resources is social media. So I personally think all teachers should be connected, because being a teacher who is interested in digital technologies can be lonely, because there's not always, everybody doesn't always have that same passion for digital technologies. And I actually call them lone rangers, because there's often that teacher in the school who's, oh, that's the computer specialist.
That's the good
this
teacher.
This is our computer expert, And so by having social media, you can join and connect with other people who actually care about the same things. And I think that same lonely feeling can also apply to being a casual, because
Absolutely.
they're often not included in the PD, and they're not invited to come to professional learning. And so for people who are on a casual in the casual system, it's really important that they can connect and join with other people who are feeling the same as them. And there's lots of great groups on Facebook that actually allow people to connect, but I would not be leaving it just to teaching groups. I'd be joining other groups. So things like the Makey group is a great group to connect with people who are interested in Makey's. I've just started moderating the Little Bird Teachers group, which is going to be for teachers who want to talk about their projects that they're working on, or have questions, technical questions that they want to ask for a community. Twitter has an amazing amount of people who are talking technology. And once you find your people, once you find your group that you love, you can post out a question and you can get a response almost immediately. So that would be one way that I would recommend. Another way is to find people who share on Pinterest, or they might have a website where they share resources, and I find those on social media. Come back to social media. So like I have a website that I curate every resource I find. I curate onto a website on coding, and that's called Code Clubbers with K's. It's free. All the resources are free. If they're not free, I mark that they're priced, what their price is. But that's just resources I have found that I share. Pinterest is another great rabbit warren. If you really like Pinterest, you can go down that tunnel and never come out.
I think that's a teacher favourite. Pinterest is certainly a teacher favourite.
That's exactly it. But there is lots of good resources, but boards do date. So I noticed I've got boards on different forms of technology, and I noticed my Makey board is actually quite out of date. So now I'm going to have to go back in and try and find some more up-to-date projects because technology changes.
I think as you said, it's important for teachers to be connected, and I think there's no better way than to connect as a relief teacher in particular. Seeing as you're not attached specifically to a school, social media is certainly really helpful, and groups that you can find on social media, whether it be, there are so many variants for teachers. There can be just general relief teaching groups, but there can be relief teaching, there can be teaching groups for literacy, teaching groups for technology. And there's always people sharing their ideas and sharing their suggestions as to where they can get resources and access to these great things that you probably wouldn't know any other way. You can always sign up to things like newsletters and things, but that requires you to actually know about the product prior to signing up. And so it begs the question, where do people find and access these these resources on their own? So I think it's a really important message to stay connected as a relief teacher specifically, because there's such a supportive community out there for teachers who want to learn. For class cover, the Relief Teacher Association is such a supportive group of teachers. And I know for a fact that everyone's sharing their experiences, but also like what's worked really well for them in their lessons and in their classrooms. And it would be great to see more people talking about technology in those groups, because I think it is an area where so many people feel uncomfortable, especially because relief teachers are such a wild mix. I mean, we've got the young teachers coming straight out of university who are seeking guidance from more experienced teachers. And then we have the experienced teachers who are maybe at the end of their careers, or, you know, starting to think about wrapping up their careers and maybe winding down from full-time teaching, who are relief teachers. So there's a real wealth of knowledge and a breadth of knowledge as well. So for teachers, I think it's a great idea to stay connected in social medias. And that always can lead to things like, you know, finding out information about specific teach meets and stuff, which I know some people find really helpful, and obviously conferences. So, you know, the Relief Teacher Association are holding our own conference, but surely there are lots of conferences that are more specific, you know, to topic areas as well. And so if technology is something that you're feeling, that, you know, a teacher's feeling uncomfortable with, it would be a great idea to access those opportunities to find you know, just the opportunities to be able to attend things like that, because all of that stuff is going to improve your practice and influence your practice.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of free PD at the moment for teachers in technology. There's a lot of groups. So I've actually just come from a teach meet, and I noticed there's actually somebody watching who is at the teach meet. So
shout out, do a shout out to those people.
Come on, Bernadette, give me a like. So the Teach Meet Sister network is really strong, particularly in capital cities. So what we're looking to do, so I'm in a regional area, and we're looking to really increase the number of Teach Meets so that teachers cross sector can come together and share. And at a Teach Meet, it doesn't matter if you're full-time, part-time, casual, just interested to know more as a parent. No, there's no rules, and they're always free. So the Teach Meet system and network is a really great one, and they actually have a website. And I think if you just Google Teach Meet, I think that would come up. I'll put it on the list. If you make notes of things I say that I've promised.
I'm sure we'll have people requesting them in the comments, so we'll have a record of it.
Make notes of all the resources I'm telling people. I'll promise. So if you Teach Meet's a really great way to network. I know that Intiact is the ICT professional group. ICTE New South Wales is the New South Wales professional group, and there's one of those in every state, and they have great low-cost provider-endorsed PD. So for New South Wales and ACT, and I think Northern Territory has a requirement for provider endorsement. They're low-cost things that you can go to where you can network, and networking is the thing that gets you work, whether it be casual, temporary, contract, or permanent work. By knowing people, by turning up at these events and getting to know people, that's how you get work. Because if there's a choice between you and another unknown, then you're more likely to get shortlisted. You know, it's not just about your application.
For sure. I think networking is really important for all teachers, because teaching is highly collaborative. And so it's really important to stay connected with not only the teachers in your school, if you're working full-time at a school, but with teachers outside of your school, because they may be doing different things to your own school. So for any type of teacher, I think it's important, but specifically so for relief teachers, because there are so many opportunities to meet teachers who are working full-time in other schools, and that they can always recommend you as well. And you're more likely to, when you attend PD, you meet other teachers, and and you can lean on them in times where you're stuck, and you can say, send them a quick message. It's so easy now with emails and with socials. I mean, send them a quick message. Absolutely.
Follow up, connect online. And one of my jobs I actually got through social media. And there's lots, and I actually know other people who've gotten positions through social media. So it's important to keep those connections. Don't burn bridges, even if hate that. Don't burn bridges, because it's surprising how incestuous and how small the teaching community is. Because you'll go, the amount of times I go to a school and they'll say, oh, I know so-and-so. And like I am talking 400 kilometres away, and they'll say, oh, I know so-and-so. They work in that school.
Yeah.
So
it's something
really
to be
important
mindful of, for sure.
It's very, very important. You never know when someone's going to turn up who you knew, somebody who they worked with, and they will ring that person and they will ask what you were like. So it's really important not to burn bridges, no matter how frustrated you are. Just go home and punch a punching bag or something, but don't say.
I mean, I guess that goes for many professional environments as well.
For sure.
But I was also
I'm astounded how small the teaching community is. You think it's big, but it's not. Now interstate, even for me, like I'm on Facebook, I went to a conference, the ACCE conference, which is the Australian College for Computing Education. I went to that conference in the holidays, and I met people there who I know on Facebook and on Twitter from Western Australia.
Right. And
so
I mean,
it's
so when you're on socials and you can connect with these groups, and if we keep it specific to digital technologies, I mean, if you go to these events and things, a great tool, I was just thinking, was LinkedIn as well. I know that a lot of people can find their positions on LinkedIn, so it's a great tip for relief teachers.
It is.
I think we'll get on to the next question. So we're just getting a little bit off topic, but I mean, it's still relevant because our audience is still relief teachers. So I think they'll still be able to get something out of that. So how can relief teachers specifically upskill themselves in the area of digital technologies? And I know we've spoken a little bit about it, but if you have any specific tips or groups, I think relief teachers would be really keen to know.
Yep. So I'm glad you asked, because we have an online course. So the University of Adelaide has an online course. It's free. It's government funded, so it's free. Internationally, it's free. And it's the website is CSERMOOCs, which is MOOCs.adelaide.edu.au. And there's 4 courses. There's Foundations, which is F to 6 or K to 6, but it's actually recommended as required knowledge for every teacher. And then we also have an extended course, which would allow you to look at project-based learning and how do you integrate it from just teaching digital technologies into maths and English. And then we've also got year 7 and 8 and a 9 and 10 course. One's on app development and one is on game-based learning. The 7, 8, 9, 10 are not year group specific, that you can swap those around. And so there's no reason why. Yes, it's just we just put them into those slots. And then primary teachers are welcome to do those if they're working with kids who are interested in app development or game development. So there's no reason why you can't do all of those. They're all mapped to the AITSL standards. So you can claim, if you're working in an endorsed system, you can claim those on teacher identified hours. And then that's not the only place though. There's other places. So Grok Learning, which is GROKLEARNING. Grok Learning, if you have an EDU account, you can actually register for that as a teacher and get free access to all of the courses that they have in there. So if you don't have an EDU account, it's $30. And it's $30 for all your students. But as a teacher, you can sign in and get free access. Now, all inside there, it goes through, for primary years, it goes through your block coding. And for secondary, it introduces Python, and it also looks at microbits and different ways that you can teach coding. So that's a second resource, and that would be through Grok Learning. ACA is Australian Computing Academy. They have free face-to-face workshops and free resources on their website. I believe their website's aca.edu.au from memory. I also run free face-to-face workshops, and so I'm the New South Wales project officer, but there's one of me in every state. So every state for the University of Adelaide has free workshops, and ACA is also doing the same thing. So that's just 3 resources for upskilling yourself. And I think Nikki Carter just said was the website. She's written it down, and that's correct. So Nikki, thanks. Thumbs up.
Great.
So,
I have a couple of questions. Sorry,
yeah.
I have a couple of questions that perhaps other teachers might be thinking as well. Firstly, to access this kind of PD, is there typically any prior knowledge, like assumed prior knowledge?
No. So for our foundations course that Class Cover's just posted there again, that is no assumed knowledge. So it's very, very easy structure. So it's got text, video, usually about 4 minutes, a video, then another text, click next, go to the next screen, text, watch the video, click next. And then at the end of each module, you're required to do a task, and you upload the task. So the tasks are all uploaded through Google+. So they would need either a personal Gmail, or they can use, if their school has a G Suite email, they can use that G Suite email.
Okay, and another question, you mentioned something about access to one of the courses by having an EDU email. Is that nationwide? Or
yes. Yes.
So that's nationwide.
So any school account, if they've got a school email for the school they're working at, then they can just use that.
Or like
if
a DET,
don't,
like a DET or even a Catholic education.
Because all schools have edu.au. So Joshua Marks just asked if you could just do the app creation course, and that's yes, you can. Yeah, you don't have to, if you've already got the knowledge, the base knowledge and the language around computational thinking, you don't have to do the foundations course.
And so can you do these courses in isolation of each other? Or do you need to follow you don't need to follow a sequence, then you can do them in isolation?
No. Yeah, that's right. And Daniela's just also pointed out that the Google Plus community, it's actually a community of over 10,000 teachers, and all those teachers are putting in resource ideas and lesson ideas. So as a casual teacher, a lot of them, if you, in the search bar on the left-hand side, you type in Unplugged or offline, and you'll get a whole stack of lesson ideas pop up that you don't need computers for. You can just teach. And it is a really great community for sharing.
And just off the back of that, then, I wonder if you could give us any information then as to, I think a lot of teachers would be sort of scratching their heads about, well, how am I teaching technologies without using technology? Could you walk us through what a lesson, sort of related to digital technologies but not using digital technologies, like what would that look like?
Okay, so one of the key outcomes or content descriptors is to do with algorithms. And so you're working toward teaching. An algorithm is a step-by-step process that usually translates into coding or programming. And so the key thing everyone talks about is coding, but if you don't have a computer, what you want to do is you might say, for example, I noticed in Kmart they've got these little cheap wooden toys that are sandwiches. So there's 2 bits of timber for the bread and a piece for the cheese, and they're about $8. So one of my colleagues actually bought one of those and put them out, and the kids had to write a step-by-step procedure on how to make the sandwich. And the reason she did that was because of the amount of anaphylaxis in classrooms. So my classroom, I'm a teacher as well as this job, and my last semester I had 5 anaphylactics in my classroom. So taking food into the classroom isn't always practical. But if you've got things that can allow you to teach that concept without the food, so for example, this little timber toy, the kids then write a step-by-step. First, pick up 1 slice of bread and place it on the plate.
That relates then to like computational thinking, like things like procedure, which I think you would typically, you typically teach that as part of a literacy unit.
You would, and you can. But the problem is with a recipe, it says, lay the bread on the table, put the butter on the bread, put the jam on the bread, close the sandwich. Like, wouldn't even tell you to close the sandwich. So what you want with an algorithm is specific step-by-step procedures on pick up 1 slice of bread, put it on the table, pick up the knife, pick up the butter, put the butter on the knife. It's really specific, so a human robot can follow it. Yeah. And if you Google human robot jam sandwich, sit down with a cup of coffee and be prepared to spurt it out. Don't drink while you're watching it, because it will actually, it's hilarious the things the teachers do to the kids.
I just wonder now, I think all that information is really great, but I'm seeing a few comments fly through, and I'm not sure whether you have access to them. I mean, I don't know if I swipe up if it's going to do anything to...
Well, Danielle has just said she played the barrier game with Lego creation, and the barrier games are great. And you can do barrier games with maths, so doing 3D shapes, and you give them this multi-link cubes, and let's say everyone has 5 multi-link cubes and we're in pairs, so you and I would have identical colours, and I assemble a model, and then I have to give you the instructions to make the same model. You might do it with Lego, you might do it with Centicubes, any sorts of things. If you were doing with MAB blocks, for instance, you would have they just have to build some sort of structure, and I would have to give you the instructions on how to build that. Then you can, so that's your maths lesson. Then you can go to English and write a procedure on how to do that. So that's 2 lessons based on 1 stimulus. So I was just going to scroll back through some of the questions. What were some of the questions?
So I'm just seeing, I haven't seen so many yet. I've scrolled right back to the beginning, so I'm seeing a lot of "we can hear you now" things. So I'm just looking through, people are sharing those websites that you suggested, which is really great. So if you are just tuning in, or if you missed some of what Meridith said around the website resources that you can check out, they're all in the comments, because people have been writing them in there, so that's great.
But I'll put together a document and I'll send it to you, so we'll put it in the page, on the class cover page, so that everyone can access it if you like.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
I'm seeing. So Penny has written a comment saying, okay, so a step-by-step process for text analysis, paragraph writing, but it's sort of more explicit and straightforward than the alarm matrix, perhaps. I'm not sure what the alarm matrix is. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
No, I don't know.
No, I don't know that one either.
So instead of, when you have a recipe, so when we teach kids to make jelly, for instance,
I mean, it doesn't need to always be a recipe, right? Like, it can be a procedure on how. It can be a procedure on how to, say, brush your teeth. And it's like pick up the toothbrush
to go home.
That's right.
Pack up. Yeah. It can be anything. It could be let's go outside and give directions to our human robot friend who is going to walk around the handball courts. It could be instructions to do a 2D shape. It could be, any simple set of instructions, and you would do it based on the skills of your class. So that's not necessarily year specific, because it depends on how capable your class is and whether they've done it before, what their literacy skills are like. If they're really, really low literacy, you could use arrow keys. So arrow symbols, sorry. So, instead of, say, turn right, you can just put a right arrow, and if you have to turn right twice, you would put 2 right arrows. I did a lesson with year 2 where we talked in math about doing directions around the outside, around the climbing equipment, and it was a rectangular shape. We had to discuss, how do you measure a turn? So that's not even an outcome. That's not even an outcome or a content descriptor for you too. But how do you measure a turn? So we just talked about it in terms of the corner of a table is a right angle. So when you get to the corner of the climbing equipment, you want to do 1 right angle. So they would say turn right, 1 right angle. And I showed them how to draw a picture of a right angle. And I just said, don't worry about what that means. That's just how we measure a corner. And so they did that. And then they went into formal measurement and informal measurement, because they had different measurements for different lengths of the rectangle. So there was a lot of mathematical discussion around that.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like it's a maths lesson. So I mean, I could understand if people would get confused as to, are we teaching math or are we teaching digital technology? I suppose my question would be, on behalf of other teachers, how do you know what you're assessing in terms of whether it's a maths outcome or a digital technologies outcome?
Okay, so it might be both.
Sure.
that mathematical thing I was just talking about, where they went round the frame, the climbing equipment, if I'm looking at the procedure that they've written and the instructions that they've written, I might be assessing their understanding of an algorithm, and do they know what a step-by-step procedure is? And it depends what year group you're in as to what the requirements are and whether it's how deep knowledge they need. So you want, that might be, the procedure might be the mathematical outcome, but the mathematical language and discussion, or maybe you could get them to write a description later with a focus on 2D shapes. Then you would be assessing, did they understand a rectangle has equal sides and two sides are longer than the other two? And so it's about what you want to assess. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's maths, but the procedural writing of the instructions and the order of the steps, that would be your algorithm. So we're talking here in the context of teachers who, A, don't have access to technology and still required to teach algorithms, and teachers who maybe their class hasn't got a base understanding yet of what a step-by-step procedure. So this might be preliminary introductory concepts, because so let's say you did that concept with a square with a year 4 group. Let's just have a review of what's a square. I want you to give instructions for your buddy to draw a square, either on a page or standing up. So that's one lesson. The next lesson is I want you to write that in English in a step-by-step procedure. That's the second lesson. The third lesson might be open up pencilcode.net. Does someone want to write that in the comments? Pencilcode.net. And it's like Turtle, which was a very simple programming from the 80s. Right, open up pencilcode.net and now draw me a square using block coding and get the turtle to draw the square. So that's a sequence of 3 lessons. They could be taught all in one day, or they could be taught over a period of a week or 2 weeks, depending on when. And it's following that same theme, and you're building on your knowledge from doing it offline, then writing your thanks Claire.
Thank you, Josh.
And Josh. So you're putting down your steps and writing your English. So that might be an English task, but that process of writing down the steps is actually called pseudocode. And pseudocode is what you do when you're planning your program. And so this pseudocode is something that programmers do. If you can't say in words your program that you're writing, you can't program it. So they have to have their head around what is the program and what steps is it going to follow. So first take 1 step forward, turn right 90 degrees, take 1 step forward, turn right. I have to understand that concept if I'm going to get a little turtle to go forward 100, turn right 90, forward 100, turn right 90. Okay, so they're all linked.
There's another resource I'm thinking of, Bbots. Bbots do similar things to that as well. Yeah, you can program them to do. Yeah. And they're typically more used for the infant grades, like K to 2. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. So if you're in a school, I have one. Fancy. Everyone has a Bbot sitting on their desk, don't they?
That's what a Bbot looks like.
Here. That's what a Bbot looks like.
We actually have we've a link to this to 5 lesson plans that you can use with Bbot somewhere, maybe in our quarterly scoop. But I've certainly seen them used in classrooms, and I mean kids love them because they're so user friendly and they're so kid friendly.
I just put the word up there because someone said it's Bbot, not Bbox. And there's actually something called Bluebots, and Bluebots are see-through, same principle with the buttons on the top, which allow you to do your directions. But the Bluebots also have an iPad control, and they can turn 45 degrees rather than just 90. So the Bluebot is, if you come across Bluebots, they're actually more, they can actually be used into stage 2 because you're talking 45 degrees. You can also, with the iPad, use them without the physical creature. So you don't need, you can just do them on screen then. So if you don't have Bluebots, but your class has iPads and they have the Bluebot app, you'd be able to plan a lesson around using that with visual coding in a stage 1 or a K to 2 classroom. Yeah. So to use those, I know you said you've got some lessons, but you actually could use them in reading and math groups. because it all comes down to what your flashcards are that you put underneath your clear mat. So you can put down a clear mat, and then they can set up little bingo games where you and I might both have the same card, and you say, I'm going to go from the word where to the word there, and if you get that correct, you get a counter. But if you get it wrong, I get a counter. You know,
Yeah,
so
right.
just testing sight words or doing mathematical concepts or anything.
I think this is all...
Oh, someone said about Sphero.
Yeah, I think this is all great. Sorry.
Oh,
sorry. We're talking over the top of one another. I just thought we'd take a look at the time. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see how long we've been live for.
6:45. 6:45.
So it's 6:45 right now. So we still have 15 minutes. So okay. I just wondered then. There was something I was going to ask, and it's just escaped me.
Somebody's asked how much the bee-bots cost.
Sure.
And the bee-bots you usually buy. You can buy them individually, and I don't know the cost, but I know for a swarm of bees, which is about 6, and the mats is about $1,200. They're not cheap toys.
They're not cheap.
And no, and the Spheros are not either. So the Spheros are very similar. The Spheros have an app that goes with them that you can use with text-based coding, block-based coding, or text-based coding. So Spheros are actually really flexible from K up to even into high school with the text-based coding.
The thing with bee-bots and Spheros and things like that, I mean, if you're at a school that has invested in those kind of that kind of equipment, you can always be really proactive and just say to them, I mean, if you do your own PD around how to use these resources, it shows that you have the knowledge for a start. If you go in and say, do I have access to these kinds of resources? And I mean, the worst that can happen is they say, well, no, but maybe tell me more about it. And that's always going to be great knowledge for a relief teacher going into a school. I've remembered what I was going to ask you, by the way.
Okay.
If a relief teacher goes into a school and they have maybe the typical, like what you might find in a typical classroom. So there might be an interactive whiteboard. Maybe they'll have a few, access to a few iPads, if they're lucky. Maybe there's a whole class set. Maybe there are only 5. Maybe they have a few laptops, but, there's no bee-bots, no Sphero. Maybe that's all they've got access to. I mean, what could you suggest that they could do on the fly, perhaps even just with an interactive whiteboard that's connected to the internet?
I'd start with something like the CS Unplugged website. That can be used right into high school. So I don't know what type of, skill sets we're looking at with all the people who are watching, whether they're primary and high school or predominantly primary, but the CS Unplugged is definitely something you can use from, it actually says from 5 years up. I think it just depends on what the class is like and what you're like and what your teaching strategy is like. I think with regard to teaching all of these things, it's really important that you do the activity. So pencilcode.net actually has some little workshops in there that you can go through and do the little tutorials yourself. If you're doing a novel study, you read the book. Shannon, yes, CS Unplugged. And so if you read the book. So if you're going to teach something with digital technologies like a bee-bot, and you're going to be teaching that, try and get to school a little bit early so that you can actually have a go and play it, or postpone the lesson till after lunch so that you can have a go at lunch. And a lot of casuals have a good relationship with their schools. A lot of casuals are repeat casuals. They're invited back over and over. And if you've got that type of relationship, ask if you can, can I go get one of these and have a go at lunchtime, or can I have a go after school or whatever, so that you can build your own skills, because some of these things, you're not going to actually get access to them unless you're in a school with those things. So you do need to actually have a practice.
Well, that's it, right? Like, I mean, I think it's unrealistic to expect that relief teachers go, and purchase these out of their own pocket. And it would be so difficult to cart them around to every school that you're going to. So I think our advice to those teachers would be identify the schools that you're working at and identify the resources that are going to be available to you from, in the grades that you're teaching. And then whether it's Sphero, whether it's BBots, whether it's iPads, I would tailor my professional development around, well, what's available at the school, because there's no point doing PD or learning about BBots if you're not going to have access to them. So we want these lessons to be accessible to, we want digital technologies to be accessible to everyone who's going into a school, and that's going to look different from school to school.
It will.
So
it will.
There are obviously schools that are going to invest more in, technological equipment than others. And I think it's up to the teacher to identify what schools have what, and then to plan their PD accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, if you've got a good relationship with your school and they're running, ask, do you mind if I come to the PD? There's a lot of, I go to schools all the time, and they do invite their casuals and their temporary teachers to come to their PD. So ask if you've got a good, just say, if you've got something on and I'm not working that day, would you mind if I attend?
That's right.
Depending on your relationship, you might actually be surprised.
That's for sure.
I like Leanne's comment. That's true. You can't be an expert. There's always going to be kids who know more than you, and I actually have had that, and I know I'm really comfortable with digital technologies, but I have had kids who know more than me, and so it's about questioning and asking. So what have you tried? What could you try? Let's sit down and find an answer to that together. Is there someone else in the classroom who's done what you're trying to do? And try not to set yourself up as the expert all of the time. In fact, some of the best teachers I've met are the ones who say, I don't know how to do this, go. And
that's
so
right.
there's that, you don't have to be an expert. It's
and they, children or students can often show their understanding, by teaching someone. I think that's really important to remember, is they will have a really their understanding will be really clear if they can explain how to do something. And it's so good for them to be able to problem solve, and I think digital technologies lends itself really well to elements of problem solving. I'm just seeing a few questions come in about PD, so I don't know whether you want to answer some of those.
Okay, so I have an Eventbrite. If you Google me, I might actually type it on so that everybody can see what my handle is. Everywhere on social media, I'm always iMerynet, which is IMERINET. So I'm always iMerynet. So if you Google iMerynet, because people often spell Meridith wrong, you'll find me on everything. And so I have an Eventbrite, and my Eventbrite list, I'll put that on the links. And the Eventbrite is Meridith Ebbs, EBBS. And I've got a course coming up next week in Coffs Harbour. I've got a course the week after that in, I'm just typing in my name so people can spell it correctly. I've got a course the week after that in Tamworth and in Armidale. So, and they're free. So and being casual, I'm happy if you want to contact me directly through the Eventbrite and say, look, I don't know if I'm working that day. Can I just turn up? Just do that and book a ticket. And if you turn up, you turn up. If you don't, just email me and let me know you're not coming, because I understand you can't miss money, especially at this time of year. Just let me know if you can't come, and it's all free, and you'll find, yes, I am going to Dubbo next year. So thank you, Evelyn.
So it's great. This is great for people who might not be in urban areas like Sydney, and in regional areas it can be tenfold difficult to find PD.
It can.
About digital technologies. But off the back of that, I will mention, and I think we're coming up to our 7 o'clock.
Yeah, we are. 6 minutes.
6 minutes. So I might just then talk about a little bit about the Relief Teacher Association and the PD we offer, and additionally the conferences that we're holding as of Saturday. So the Relief Teacher Association has over 70 hours of, if you're in New South Wales, NESA registered PD, which is accessible online, and the whole online library is accessible for anyone with a Relief Teacher Association membership, and it's all there. Face-to-face learning, we're so privileged to have Meridith presenting at our Sydney conference, which is happening on the 24th. It's a Saturday the 24th of November at the New South Wales Teachers Federation Conference Centre in Surrey Hills. There are still tickets on sale, so if you have really enjoyed some of the things that and really learned from some of the things that Meridith has had to say this evening, she's going to be speaking at our Sydney conference on the topic of visual coding. So I think it's still an introduction to visual coding, but I think you'll go into a little more depth than perhaps this webinar. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, the focus will be on visual coding and how to do it. So that will be the focus. So because I think it's only a 1 hour session, so it's not a huge amount. And learning to code is like learning to read. You know, kids come to school, think they're going to learn to read on the first day. Well, all that 1 hour will do is introduce the concepts, show you how it works, and then you're on your own, pretty much. But
you'll have the ideas of where to go to access that learning.
Yeah, and I'll give you resource ideas and how to get more training afterwards, and how to find projects. How do you implement the projects and make them relevant to your outcomes rather than just coding for the sake of coding. So I will post all those links. Somebody just asked about the links. We've been to Wagga this year. We might go again next year. South Coast, we can go to South Coast if we've got demand. We can go anywhere in Australia. We can go anywhere. And I do New South Wales. There's 2 other people who do New South Wales because we've got over 3,000 schools to cover. So
yeah, and I mean, there's a few people asking about where the conferences are held. So I mean, we unfortunately, Meridith will only be at our Sydney one, but we do have some digital technologies topics covered at our Brisbane Conference, which is happening on this Saturday, the 17th of November. So certainly if you're in Brisbane, we'd love to see you there. I mean, I think tickets are sold out now. So, I think just connect with people who have been and we'll be able to share the information of where those presenters go and where they provide their PD. But yes, we hold the conferences in Brisbane this Saturday, Sydney next weekend, and Perth, which we still have tickets in Perth as well. So Perth is on the Saturday, the 8th of December. So yes, I'm very sorry to all those Queenslanders who would love to go to our Brisbane conference. We might have to consider booking it at a bigger venue next year, because there has been an overwhelming demand for these conferences, which is great to see. It's really great to see relief teachers who are interested in staying updated with their professional learning. So on that note,
so all those links I'll post on your page.
Great, that's so helpful for us.
I'll type it up, so it'll go on later tonight. So if they come back and check tomorrow, that it should be on there.
And I think we've had some really diligent audience members who have.
Thank you.
Really, really kindly put those links into the comments. So thank you so much. If you are attending the conferences, I would love to see you. So do come up and say hello. My name's Simone. I would love to meet you and to hear any of your feedback. And thanks so much, Meridith, for joining us this evening. It's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you at our Sydney conference next week.
No worries. See you then. Thanks, everyone.
See you. Thanks, Meridith.
Bye.
Bye.